one of our greatest guests from the greatest generation. Meet Kenny Biddle, coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Elizabeth Maddox Chapin Library on the Grand Strand campus of Horry Georgetown Technical College. We're focused on the greatest generation, and we're visiting with one of its members, Kenny Biddle. Good morning.
Good morning,
Mr.
Greg. How
Biddle.
are you? Thank you.
Great to have you in. I got to say, I got up early this morning. I was thinking, this guy is all about the ABCs. Born in Canada, growing up in Colorado, living much of his life in California.
Yeah.
Now living in Conway and on the creek front in Murrells Inlet. If it wasn't for your time in the Army Air Corps and your last name being Biddle, it would be all about the letter C. But we got an A and a B in there, so it was great thinking about it this morning. Of course, that does not encapsulate you. I don't even think 30 minutes will do it. But I'd seen your son a couple of weeks ago, and he had some great things talking about his father, who's gotten on the internet and is now sending emails to people all over the world. And I thought, what a great opportunity, a gentleman who's almost 90. Great to get you in.
Well, I have email cousins in Canada, Colorado, and California. Now, these people that I have most emails with that are far away are children that I knew when I was young in Canada.
In Canada.
Because we went there every summer, like 24, 25, and 26, or maybe 25, 26, and 27.
You're talking about the years, yeah.
Every summer we went to Canada.
Yeah.
Once we went to Edmonton for a summer. Then we went to St. Paul for a summer. And then we went to Post Falls, Idaho for a summer. But my father worked for the railroad, so there was no problem with transportation. He worked for the Union Pacific.
Right.
So that's why we took all these trips.
You fell in love with the railroad.
Yes. Yes, I did.
It's fascinating reading a little bit about you. I believe your daughter-in-law and your son helped me get a little ready for being with you this morning by laying something out. And there was a point in there where you're riding on the top of railroad cars.
Yes. Sometimes you couldn't get in them because they were sealed. And you tried to find an empty if you could, and if you did, there's probably 20 other guys in there.
Right.
But you could ride on top all right.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd unbuckle our belts and loop through the catwalk and fasten them back up and go to sleep.
You'd go to sleep riding on the top of a moving?
Yes.
No, not moving.
Yes.
A moving railroad?
Yeah. Yeah.
You say, yeah, like that's no big deal. I mean,
well,
I don't get it quite
in
yet.
those days. It was no big deal in those days. I remember probably on one freight train there were probably 250 free riders. And they looked to put us off. And they did several times. There was no place to go. So we'd haunt the dairies to help them with their milking. In the morning we could help them, and in the evening we could help them. And during the day we could chop up the soil or whatever they had, and then we'd get a meal and probably breakfast the next morning, and then they'd shove you away. And we also could find the local county jails as a good place to stay over the night.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
How would the jail let you in?
Well, they'd if you went up there, say in the evening between 5 and 7, why they would be open, and you'd go in and say, I haven't got any place to sleep. So they said, okay, we can sleep here for the night. And you were locked in.
Right.
And they gave you a bowl of porridge and milk the next morning and put you on your way.
I can't even imagine. I hate to tell you, my father had a similar experience, and they had to do the same thing. Had to lock him up because he was walking back in the cold and had no place to go at one point in his college years.
Yeah, well, so that's what happens.
That is fascinating.
And there were 4 of us started off from Colorado together, and only 2 of us wound up together another 6 or 8 months later. The rest of them got homesick and went home.
Believable. I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating seeing about some of your early years. Now, you were born in
Canada.
In Canada.
Nanton, Alberta.
And I believe your mother was Canadian, your father was from Wisconsin?
My mother was Scotland.
Oh, Scotland, that's right, and your father was...
My father was from Thorpe, Wisconsin. But he was the foreman of a ranch in Nanton. And my mother and her sister were cooks for the crew that worked on the ranch.
Right.
Probably about 20 men. And my mother and her sister were cooks for the Hayden Ranch.
Right.
Hayden. And that's about all I can tell you about
Sure.
that.
Now, what is your earliest childhood memory? Was it there? Had you already moved to Colorado?
Yes. My earliest memory of Nanton was probably 25 or 26, the first year that we went there, first summer that we went there.
1925 or 26?
Yeah, 1925 or 26. And I met these people that were relatives of mine, and we just became friends, and there was a lot of boys around, all red-headed, just like I was, and we all had a great time over the summers.
Right, right.
And my mother's sister married a fellow from England by the name of Duthie.
Duthie.
And he had a string of horses there that were used for draying. And they were Percherons. And so they had quite a bit of property, so you could hang out anywhere.
Right, right. You know, it's so fascinating reading about, of course, you're talking about age, born in 1918, you're talking about age 8 or 9. I know you'd mentioned earlier this morning that you had some vivid memories of even a teensy bit earlier age when you were doing I don't want to say a newspaper route, because I understand you just got on a corner there, but since our show is sponsored by the Myrtle Beach Herald, share with viewers about that first experience of selling newspapers.
Well, I sold on the corner for the Denver Post.
For the Denver Post.
And reason I got beat up was because they didn't want no new kid coming in to get the papers in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
And so you had to stand in line, and after I did stand in line, somebody came along and said, "You took my place," and I said, "No, I didn't." And anyway, there's ruckus started.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So a fellow that came along and said, "You're bleeding pretty bad." I had my split lip. I still had the scar.
Oh.
And he said, "Come on upstairs," and he said, "We'll get you fixed up." So I said, "Okay." So if you wanted to check somebody out, after this was all over and everything, his name was Doc Bird Finch.
Huh.
And he was a cartoonist for the Denver Post.
Right, right.
And in the meantime, while they were patching me up, Frederick G. Bonfils, who was the publisher and owner, came along and says, "What's going on here?" The ladies were fixing me up, you know, the typists and so forth. So they told him, and he said, "Well, don't you have a corner?" And I said, "No." Well, all of the corners were allocated out. He said, "Which corner do you want?"
No, the publisher said that to you. That's a nice position.
So I told him, "Well, I want the one right on the corner from out the front door. It's yours." So
come on.
Yeah, so I sold papers there for 2 or 3 years, especially in the wintertime.
Am I correct? You bought them for 2 cents?
And sold them for 3.
That's a pretty good margin there, yeah.
Yeah, normally people would buy a paper and they wouldn't want their 2 cents. They'd say, "Here's a nickel, go ahead," you know. So it was pretty good deal, but you could only buy 10 at a time.
They would only sell you 10 at a time?
Yeah, after you got rid of those 10, then you had to go back and get another 10.
Well, great that you didn't have to walk far.
No, I didn't. They treated me pretty well, the Denver Post did.
That's tremendous. And you were pretty young then.
5 and 6 years old.
That's amazing. So your parents obviously knew what you were doing. They knew you were, and being right there out the front door, you were in a pretty safe location. Was the Denver area just that way, that parents would have 5 or 6-year-old children out and that it was okay?
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't a very large city at that time, about 40,000.
Right.
Now it's about 6 million, I think, or 4 million or something like that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And anyway, my father and mother bought a house in Aurora. So that was 14 miles away.
Right.
And the only way to get out there was by streetcar. And it was a number 14, and it went all the way to the end of the line, and you got off there and walked a block and a half to where we lived at 1315 Uinta Street. And then so when we started to travel, after they moved out and got the house and so forth and so on, because otherwise we were living in a cold water flat. I don't know if you know what a cold water flat is.
No, no. Share with us, please.
No hot water.
Oh, well, yes. No hot water at all.
No hot water, no.
How'd you take a shower?
Well,
a cold shower?
In a
or bath?
A copper boiler. One of the old copper boilers. I don't know if you've ever seen one or not.
I don't think I have.
Everybody had one. And they'd put the boiler on the stove and fill it about half full of water, and then everybody would take a bath in the same water. And they'd bring it down off the stove and put it on the floor. Mm. So that's what we did. And we used coal as a heat. And there wasn't much to the place. It was only a living room and 2 bedrooms. And a little small little kitchen. Well, a kitchen you didn't have, you just had a stove. That's all you had.
You have vivid memory of this, Kenny.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, just hearing you say riding streetcar number 14,
yeah,
clearly you've got a pretty vivid memory.
Yeah, I remember a lot of things. I've forgotten a lot of things also. Maybe on purpose.
Possibly blocking some out.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. What year was it that you, not to fast forward too far, but what year was it that you got into the U.S. Army Air Corps?
1940.
Is that right? Okay.
I was a draft dodger.
Oh, good. You're admitting it now.
Yeah.
Getting that off your chest.
Well, in the old days, they had a big fishbowl. I don't know if you've ever heard this before or not.
No.
And the president at that time, I've forgotten who it was, used to put his hand in there and draw out a bunch of numbers. And then if your number came up, and you were supposed to report to the Air Corps or the U.S. Army, and then you would be, from there, you would be sent to a repo depot, and then you would take your year's training, and you would be out. If you went in 1940, you'd be out in 1941. Or 42, maybe.
Right.
I was ready to get out in February of 42 or 41.
Mm-hmm.
Then Pearl Harbor came along, so I was duration plus 6 months.
You weren't getting out, that's right.
No, I wasn't getting out. And Hertha was pregnant, and she was still living in California when they come looking for me. I don't know how they found me, but they found me. They said, "We've been looking for you for 3 months."
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
And you were in your early 20s.
Yeah,
and I know we fast forwarded to.
I was 22.
You were 22, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so we just put all our groceries in our car and took them back to the Inks Brothers Market in Sacramento, and they gave us credit for cash.
Right.
Came back out in the car and got a bottle of Johnny Walker Brown label and put it between the seats, and away we went to Colorado.
Is that right?